The NBC studio director was screaming into his headset, and he was not happy. "Cut the dance section. 4 minutes is too long for TV. Just sing the song and get off stage." March 25, 1983. Backstage at Pasadena Civic Auditorium. Motown 25 was about to broadcast live to 47 million viewers. And Michael Jackson had just been told to cancel the one thing he'd been secretly practicing for weeks. But there was something the director, the producers, and even the MTV executives didn't know. Michael wasn't just planning to perform. He was about to weaponize 8 seconds of movement that would shatter the music industry's racial barriers forever. The war between Michael Jackson and MTV had been raging for months, and it was getting uglier. In early 1983, MTV had a policy that wasn't written down anywhere official, but everyone in the industry knew it. Rock music only, and that meant white artists only. Black artists didn't get airplay, didn't get into rotation, didn't exist in MTV's universe. When Epic Records tried to submit Billie Jean for consideration, MTV's programming director Bob Pittman had actually laughed. "We don't play that kind of music," he'd said, not even bothering to watch the video. Walter Yetnikoff, head of CBS Records, had gone nuclear. He'd called MTV's executives and delivered an ultimatum that became legendary in the industry. "I'm pulling every video we have, Rod Stewart, Pink Floyd, all of it. You want a music channel with no music?" It was a standoff, and Michael was caught in the middle of a culture war he didn't ask for. The irony was crushing. Michael Jackson was outselling every artist on MTV's playlist, but his face couldn't appear on their channel because of its color. The rejection wasn't just professional, it was personal. And Michael had been planning his response for months. But the Motown 25 special wasn't about any of that. This was supposed to be a safe, nostalgic reunion show celebrating Motown's 25th anniversary. Berry Gordy himself had called Michael personally. "Come celebrate with your brothers. Do the Jackson 5 classics. Give America what they want to see." What Berry Gordy didn't say, but everyone understood, was, "Don't make waves, don't take risks, just smile and sing the hits from when you were kids." Michael agreed to appear, but he had one condition that he kept to himself. He needed 4 minutes alone on that stage, not for the Jackson 5, for something else, for Billie Jean, the song that MTV refused to acknowledge existed. The song that was dominating radio but couldn't get on television because of its creator's skin color. Suzanne DePass, Motown's head of production and the show's executive producer, was having none of it. "Michael, this is a Motown reunion special. Billie Jean isn't a Motown song. It doesn't fit the theme. You're here for nostalgia, not to promote your solo career." Michael's response was quiet, almost whispered. "I'll do the Jackson 5 medley, but I need to do one solo song. Trust me." Suzanne didn't trust him. She knew Michael well enough to know that "trust me" from Michael Jackson meant he was planning something that would terrify network executives. The rehearsals were tense. Every time Michael ran through his Billie Jean performance, NBC's director Don Mischer would interrupt. "Too long! Cut the middle section! We need commercial breaks! You're eating into the Supreme segment!" Michael would nod, seem to agree, then do the exact same extended version the next run-through. In his dressing room between rehearsals, Michael was doing something strange that his brothers noticed but didn't understand. He was meticulously polishing the bottoms of his black loafer shoes. Not the tops, the bottoms, making them as slick and smooth as possible. "Michael, what are you doing?" Marlon asked, watching his younger brother obsess over shoe shine. "Making sure they're ready," Michael replied without looking up.
"Ready for what?"
Michael just smiled that electric smile and kept polishing. What nobody except Michael's closest choreographer knew was that for 6 weeks, Michael had been practicing something in his garage in Encino. Something he'd seen street dancers do in Venice Beach. Something called the backslide, though Michael was about to rename it and own it forever. He'd watch footage of tap dancers doing similar moves in the 1930s and 40s, studied Cab Calloway, absorbed techniques from mime artist Marcel Marceau, and synthesized it all into 8 seconds of impossible-looking movement. But it wasn't just the move itself. It was when he planned to do it, how he planned to surprise 47 million people simultaneously, and what message he was sending by doing it on live television without permission. The night of March 25th arrived. Backstage was chaos. Diana Ross was running late. The Temptations were having microphone issues. The Jackson 5 reunion segment went smoothly, exactly as planned. Michael smiling and moonwalking through I Want You Back and The Love You Save, like it was 1970 again. But everyone who knew Michael could see the difference in his eyes. He wasn't present. He was conserving energy, preparing for what came next. When the Jackson 5 segment ended, Michael was supposed to exit stage left and let the show continue. Instead, he walked back to center stage, grabbed the microphone, and spoke directly to 47 million people. I have to say those were the good old days. I love those songs, but especially I like the new songs. The NBC control room exploded. Don Mischer grabbed his headset. "What is he doing?" This wasn't scripted. Suzanne DePass stood up from her seat in the audience, her face a mixture of shock and rage. Michael wasn't asking permission, he was taking what he needed. "This is the one I really want to do," Michael whispered into the microphone with that slight quiver in his voice that made him sound vulnerable and dangerous at the same time. The opening bass line of Billie Jean began pounding through the Pasadena Civic Auditorium. Backstage, an MTV executive who'd been invited to watch the taping grabbed a phone and called his boss in New York. "He's doing that urban song, the one we rejected. Get ready for the phone calls." The MTV boss's response was ice cold. "If this goes well, we look stupid for not playing it. Kill the feed. It's broadcast television. We don't control it. Then make sure our station doesn't acknowledge it happened." But 47 million people were already watching, and nothing could stop what was coming. Michael started moving. Not the choreographed safe movements from the Jackson 5 medley. This was different. Sharp, electric, dangerous. He spun, frozen poses that seemed to defy physics, hit beats with his body that made the audience gasp. Every move was a middle finger to everyone who told him to play it safe. The cameramen, who'd been given strict instructions to keep wide shots and not zoom in too much, started ignoring their director's commands. They couldn't help themselves. They'd never seen anything like this. Camera 3 zoomed in tight on Michael's feet, the operator's hands shaking slightly, because he knew he was disobeying orders but couldn't stop himself. Camera 2 caught his face, glistening with sweat, eyes closed, lost in something beyond performance. In the wings, stage manager Artie Fields grabbed his walkie-talkie. "Don, the cameras aren't following your shot sheet." Don Mischer's response came through, crackling with static and disbelief. "I know. Let them shoot." And then, at exactly 2 minutes and 42 seconds into the song, it happened. Michael spun, froze, and then slid backward. 8 seconds. That's all it took. 8 seconds of Michael Jackson appearing to defy gravity, friction, and every law of physics that human movement is supposed to obey. His feet moved backward, while his body stayed perfectly upright, perfectly controlled, as if the stage itself was a treadmill moving beneath him. But it wasn't just the movement. It was the illusion of effortlessness, the way his polished loafers glided across the stage floor like he was skating on ice. Second one, the initial glide, his right foot sliding back while his left pushed forward. Second 2. The switch. Reversing the motion so smoothly that your brain couldn't process the mechanics. Seconds 3 through 6. Pure, sustained impossibility. Michael traveling backward across the stage while appearing to walk forward. Second 7. The subtle weight shift that prepared for the finale. Second 8. The stop. Frozen in place. One leg cocked, arms spread, owning the moment with the confidence of someone who knows. They just changed everything. The Pasadena Civic Auditorium lost its collective mind. The audience didn't just applaud, they screamed. Diana Ross put both hands over her mouth, her eyes wide. The Temptations, standing in the wings, stopped their vocal warm-ups and just stared. In the NBC control room, Don Mischer forgot he was supposed to be angry. His hand was frozen above the button that could cut to commercial. He couldn't press it. Nobody could look away. And in that moment, Michael Jackson did something that cemented the move as more than just a dance step. He stopped mid-performance, struck a pose, tipped his fedora, and pointed directly at camera 3 as if to say, "Yes, I know exactly what I just did to your minds." This wasn't accidental. This wasn't spontaneous showmanship. This was calculated rebellion. Michael had just hijacked prime-time network television, performed a song that MTV had banned, executed a move that would be replicated by millions, and done it all with the kind of confidence that only comes from knowing you're making history in real time. The performance ended. Michael walked off stage. The studio audience was still screaming. But the real explosion was happening in living rooms across America. Within minutes, NBC's phone lines were jammed. "Who was that? What was that move? When can we see it again?" MTV's offices received a different kind of call. "Why aren't you playing this? Why isn't Michael Jackson on your channel?" The next morning, MTV's programming director walked into an emergency meeting with their executive team. The message was clear. The policy was over. They couldn't ignore Michael Jackson anymore. By April 2nd, 1 week after Motown 25 aired, Billie Jean was in heavy rotation on MTV. Not because MTV wanted to change, but because Michael Jackson had forced them to evolve or become irrelevant. Fred Astaire, 84 years old and the greatest dancer in Hollywood history, called Michael the next day. His message was short. "You're a hell of a dancer." Michael, who'd worshipped Astaire his entire life, cried when he got the message. But the real impact went beyond Michael's career or MTV's policy change. That 8-second moonwalk became a cultural detonation point. Suddenly, black artists who'd been shut out of MTV rotation were getting calls. Prince, Tina Turner, Lionel Richie. The floodgates opened, not because MTV's executives had a change of heart, but because Michael Jackson had proven that ignoring black artistry was no longer commercially viable. As for Don Mischer, the NBC director who'd screamed at Michael to cut the dance, he was fired within 3 months. Not for being wrong about Michael, but for not recognizing brilliance when it was rehearsing right in front of him. That performance wasn't just a dance. It was a declaration. Michael Jackson didn't ask permission to break barriers. He moonwalked through them. MTV's rock-only policy collapsed within weeks. Black artists flooded the rotation. And it all started with 8 seconds of calculated disobedience.